Hey, welcome to the weekly walk on. We got a special episode this week. We are going live for the first time ever on the weekly walk on, and it is on College Sports Crew's YouTube network. So, those of you that normally listen on iHeartRadio, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or Amazon Music through Alexa, it might not be quite as clean and quite as edited as normal because this is the live version, and then I posted it later to the podcast services. So something a little bit new. If you only ever listen to the show, through the podcast services, feel free to go over to College Sports Crew on the YouTube channel, check it out, and see if this monotone voice matches to the face that if it matches up and what you expected I look like. So excited to do this for the first time ever. I've been on YouTube multiple times with another show, Sweet Tea in the SEC, on the College Sports Crew, but want to try something a little bit different with the podcast. So looking forward to this. And my guest is Cortland, a good buddy who been on the weekly walk on multiple times. And Cortland, man, what's going on? Hope you had a great New Year's Day other than last night's game.
Yeah, no, it was good. Hung out at the house, watched football for most of the part yesterday. It was good, and I was enjoying it until about, I guess, probably 10 o'clock last night, maybe 10:30, a little bit later, when the wheels started falling off. But yeah, no, it was good. How was the game last night?
Man, it was an absolute blast. I always love that. The only real downside is as the red hat assistant, you're at the 20-yard line and you don't really get to move up and down the field. So that's the only downfall. I'm getting into the stadium for free. It's always the last few years, it's been a quarterfinal, semifinal game. It's been amazing matchups. So no complaints. It's a cool experience. That was probably the best Sugar Bowl I've been to, even including the national championship LSU Clemson that the Superdome hosted. That was probably a more special experience, but I think the game, that was the best game. It was hard hitting. It was two quality teams. It was close. It was exciting. All the other Sugar Bowls I've been on the sidelines for, the national championship game, LSU blew out Clemson. Alabama blew out Kansas State. Ohio State blew out Clemson. None of them have really been close outside. I take that back now. Washington and Texas a couple years ago was close, came down to the final play too, but it didn't have it. It wasn't as good of a game throughout. I didn't feel like.
Yeah, that was. I mean, it ended three times. That was what we were talking about pre-show. It ended three times. But I mean, it was still never really over until the clock hit zero. Those laterals, I think somebody showed a video. Georgia threw something like 17 laterals on that last play.
It was a lot. I recorded out, and I'm gonna post it to Instagram here after we get done recording this. But it was crazy. They brought the stage out twice and had to roll it back off once. Not where they just rolling the stage out. They had the
walkways.
The not well. I don't know about the walkways, but the drape and curtains or the pipe and drape. They had the pipe and drape around the edge of the stage already, and they had to take that down. The Gatorade bath had already happened the second time Ole Miss ran out onto the field. So it was an interesting finish. I've never seen one quite like it, and I was involved with the Bluegrass Miracle. So different finish. Obviously, this one didn't punch me in the gut like the first one did, but it was definitely an interesting finish.
Yeah, I've watched many Georgia games, and this one was I self-admittedly turned it off with about 9 minutes to go when they went up by 10, or when Ole Miss went up by 10. Georgia couldn't do anything second half. I mean, just it was 21-12 at half, and it was only reason it was 21 because of the scoop and score. And outside of those two drives in the second quarter, Georgia could do nothing offensively. So after they went up by 10 with less than 9 to go, I was like, it's over. It's late. I'm an old man. And then as I was getting ready for bed, my phone started blowing up, and before I could even get in bed, it was the Zion Branch or the Zachariah Branch touchdown. And so then, okay, I said I'll turn it back on, and then they stopped them, and then they got the ball. But I was like, okay, so there's a chance. And then, when they scored with a minute left, even though there was no timeouts, and I think the first half kind of debacle with the clock management by Ole Miss, I think was in the back of their head, in the back of my mind. I was like, they're going to go down and score. It's not. It's the they were given a freebie, basically a get out of jail free card, and they're going to go down and score. I didn't think it'd be on a bomb like that.
Yeah.
They've played them. They've played them tight all game, and they did well all game. It was just these little dinks and dunks, and I think there's maybe two passes that were actually in the air more than like 20 yards that were completed. I just the moment that one, I was like, all right, it's over.
Yeah, as soon as I released his hand, I could see that he was open and had him beat, just the angle that I had on the
Yeah,
sideline. So
yeah.
transitioning now, that game now makes the team with the bye 1-7 in the playoffs. And furthermore, teams that have played in a conference championship game per at dog stats on Twitter, if you played in a conference championship game, even if you didn't have that first round bye, you're now 6-13 in the 12-team format. So, there's going to be changes that come. I think the top seeds are going to get frustrated with having I feel they're at a disadvantage almost sometimes. I think some of them might have just been matchups. Like I think Ohio State Miami matchup was Ohio State's weakness was their offensive line. Miami's strength was their defensive line, and Miami just terrorized Julian Sain all game. And so I think some of that last year, it was the seeding, which they tweaked so that not all top or the first top four conference champions were then you didn't get the first round bye. And I think that was a good change. And I hope they don't make a wholesale because we're only in year two, but I want to go through kind of some changes that I would make, some changes you would make, and just kind of talk through that a little bit. And, John Gruden made a really good point. I think it was right around the time, I don't know if it was before the final playoffs came out or if it was right after. I don't remember, but he made a really good point on Twitter. He posted, why are the best teams in the conferences being punished by playing a conference championship game? And that makes a really good point. They're playing an extra game. They then have to, some of them don't really get as much of a bye. You had Ohio State lose, you had Alabama lose in their conference championship games. And last year you had Penn State. Those teams didn't get a first round bye and then had to play. So you're adding extra games to the schedule. I don't know if it's beneficial. But let's start with conference championship games. If you were to change them, how would you change those, Cortland?
I don't know. Being a kid that grew up watching the SEC championship is something that, like, I don't know. To me, even if my team is not playing it, it's something that you schedule kind of the beginning of the holiday season around. Hey, let's go do this. It's the SEC championship game's on. It's always the first Saturday in December, 4 o'clock. Like back in the days when it was Bama, Florida with Tebow, and then you had the LSU day where they were kind of more dominant. It just before Georgia really got in their groove. I always watched it. I think it's something special. I even think now, I don't remember the numbers exactly, but I think of all of the every single game last year, not including the CFP, the SEC championship game, the last like 3 years is the most watched game out of any game. While it's a disadvantage for the players, you can't ignore that. Like Sankey's not going to let that go away. There's too much money with that. So I think until those numbers go away, I don't know how they're going to be able to justify getting rid of it. I guess maybe if they continue to not win national championships, that there's an argument, or the SEC decides that they're going to have their own their own 14 playoff. But for the other conferences, I don't know. I don't think it's that much of a moneymaker. You watch some of the ACC or the Big Ten this year was a big deal because it was in Indianapolis, but other years the stadium's half full. Um, Big 12 is that way too. It's an 11 o'clock local kick. I don't know. The long story short is I don't know what the solution is. I know something has to change. I just don't know because I think you've got two sides of it. You have the fans, I think, who kind of know what needs to be done and what we want to see, and then you have universities that now have to fund these $20 million payrolls on top of their regular coaches' salaries and everything else. So the more they're on TV and the more games that there are, the more money there is. So I think it's going to be a battle of the two. Um, And in those kind of situations, we know which one's going to win.
It's always going to be money, and I don't think the conference championship games aren't going away, but I think there's ways to change it. Ideal world, what you do, and I all of the Power Four conferences, I would say, make money on them because of the TV rights. That's never going to go away. There's not going to be wholesale changes as far as the conference championship game. What I want to do, short story or long story short, because it'll never happen. Go back to your regional conferences. Go back to what the conferences were in the late '90s, early 2000s. And then you don't need the conference championship game because everybody plays 9 conference games. The 12 team was the biggest conference. You're playing. There will only be, if you play 9, you're the 10th team. There's only 2 teams you didn't play. The standings right there do it for you. But we know that's not going to happen. So my thoughts almost is 1-2 play for the conference champion, and then your top 6 play an extra game. 3 plays 6. 4 plays 5, and then that kind of gives you your 1-2, our first and second, and then maybe you go 1-2 and then 3-4 play, and whoever wins that 3-4 game then finishes third. Whoever wins that 5-6 game then finishes fifth, and that way you have a little bit of a pecking order to draw it down a little bit more. The SEC had 5 teams make the championship or make the playoff this year. And then that way you have a little bit of a pecking order that you have to finish in your top 6 or your top 4 or whatever it is to even make the CFP. And that way you are also having teams play an extra game that championship week so that it's not a disadvantage. I don't know if that's an answer. TV's probably going to love it because it's more TV rights. It's more money for them. And the conferences probably wouldn't hate it because they're going to get the TV rights money. So I don't know if that's an answer. It's just an idea. I didn't come up with it. I've seen that idea bounce around. I don't know how I feel about it just from the fact it's more wear and tear on these bodies at 18 to 20 years old. Maybe don't always need that, but they're also being paid a lot of money to do this. So I have less sympathy for them at that point.
Yeah. I listened to a podcast of all people. John Stinchcomb was actually a guest. This was in the beginning of the year. And basically he said, these guys you're a professional now. Even though you don't play quote unquote professional football, you are a professional now. It is your job to play football. You are also an athlete. You also have classes, but your profession is football, right? You're getting paid to play a game now. I don't know, man. I'm so torn because like your proposal sounds good, but then you look at a year where you got kind of like this year where it feels like a conference is much more stacked. Like that right there for the SEC this year sounds great. Georgia, Ole Miss, Alabama, and A&M, right? You kind of have that circular for the 1 versus 2, 3 versus 4. You've got your top 2 and the 3. But then when you go back to like ACC this year, Miami was clearly the best team in the ACC, but because of the 9th tiebreaker, they didn't make the conference championship game. How would they have looked if they had to play? I don't even remember who's in the ACC championship. It was Duke versus Virginia. Duke or Virginia. How would Miami look if they had to play Virginia? Would they still be as physical as they were versus Ohio State? I mean, they pushed Ohio State around. It was not close. Would they have still looked like that if they had one less week to kind of heal? But then again, they played A&M, and so their bye week there was no bye. They didn't have a bye week. They had an added week. I don't know. It's
and that's that. I don't have the answers either. I think when it's unbalanced like that, one, the ACC needs to fix a tiebreaker without a doubt. That's just dumb the way they did that tiebreaker. And what a lot of places do, I know the American does it. That's why Tulane hosted the American Championship game this year over North Texas. They didn't play a head-to-head game. They were the only 2 teams left with 1 loss in conference play. Maybe there was 3 teams, but North Texas beat the other team head-to-head, so they were eliminated. So it came down to the 2 teams, and Tulane was ranked higher in the CFP standings. So Tulane hosted. They got that nod as being technically the 1 seed, and North Texas was 2. So I think there's different ways to break it down. The ACC needs to change it, and there's ways to make it to where would be Miami playing in it. And again, it's not going to go back to what I want.
Oh yeah, no, I agree with the regionality of the conferences. That's what made the sport so special out of all the other ones, is that you had your regionality, arguments at a bar, but it's also had the regionality. Styles of play was different. That's what made it fun. Now that it's become more national, you've lost those arguments. But yeah, I cut you off. Sorry.
and I feel like there's more rivals too. We've lost some rivals. We didn't play Texas A&M for a long time. There's some others that my mind's going blank right now. There's definitely others that we have lost because teams have switched conferences, and I don't really like that of it either. But obviously, we're not going back to the good old days of the smaller regional conferences. So, here's an idea I've seen bounced around a lot. I want to get your opinion on it, Cortland. I know you can't see the comments, but Joseph Moore, who's an Ole Miss fan, so sorry about that, Cortland. He says, put the bowl games at the beginning of the season, kind of like preseason games or something like that. Joseph, please respond of how you would decide, type in the comments how you would decide who plays in what bowl games. But Cortland, I'm interested to hear your comments on that.
So just so I'm understanding, so he means the non-playoff games, right?
Correct.
So
Correct.
So like the Cheez-It Bowl would be the first game of next year would be Texas and Michigan next year.
Yeah. And the other ideas, I don't know if that's what Joseph's thinking. The other ideas I have seen that do this is wherever you finish that previous year, then you start in that bowl game the next year. Like the bowls are still decided at the same time, but then that next year you play in that bowl game. And I don't know if I like that idea so much, just for the fact, which eventually it'll work its way out, but the team that's playing in that bowl game isn't being rewarded the way they're not being rewarded the way that they should for their season. And that's kind of how I feel like that, because all your seniors are going to be gone. It might slow down the transfer portal a little bit, but your seniors are going to be gone. Your guys that enter the NFL early, your transfers will be gone. And so you're rewarding people for the previous season, and that team might be way better, or that team might not be as deserving to be in that bowl game. So
yeah. No, I think another way, instead of maybe preseason, I think eventually, and I've heard other people say this as well, that like your spring practices are going to go away, or like maybe not the full spring season, but it'll just be like OTAs. And so maybe to encourage that, instead of having, I remember even 2 years ago, basically the big programs had all of their spring games televised. I remember looking forward to that. I remember now this year Georgia's wasn't even on TV. I think if you wanted to watch, you had to go. It was free. I think maybe switch it around. So, like for example, the Citrus Bowl now gets played in the spring. You charge money, you charge admission, you put it on TV. People are always dying for more football, right? So I think maybe having it in the spring, you have kind of a week long bowl season at the end of spring practice, maybe something like that. Like you said, it doesn't reward the seniors, but it's a way to kind of cap the end of spring practice. You kind of see where you are going into the fall, and then it also helps with these preseason rankings that, for honest, this year missed a lot. But it gives you an idea. I don't know. It's a way. Once again, I know money controls everything. But then there's a way. Maybe you do a home and home with two teams. Texas and Michigan instead of the Citrus Bowl. Texas goes to Michigan in the spring, and then the next year Michigan goes to Texas, Michigan, etc. Maybe they flip flop. It's just something. It's a more revenue maker.
Or maybe you do and the results don't matter. So it's kind of like the NFL practicing together, or, treat it as a preseason game type thing where you're supposed to play in the Cheez-It Bowl. So you play one in Ann Arbor. It's an open scrimmage / game. And then 2 weeks later, they go play in Austin. People, you're right. You're 100% right. People will watch that. And spring games are starting to go away because coaches don't want guys behind the scenes coming in, seeing somebody play, and then trying to get them to transfer right after that if they're an up-and-comer or somebody that didn't have a lot of film or wasn't huge on the scene the previous year. So Joseph responded, and he says, the same way you do for these opening weekends, kickoff games, it would be a good way to play out the conference games and to help build strength of schedule and strength of record instead of throwing cupcake games on the schedule in October. I like that a lot.
I don't hate it. I mean,
I I like that as well. My only thing is then and there's going to be a class that completely doesn't get rewarded or something unless you play the bowl game to end the season and then play a bowl game to start a season too. But
Yeah.
the players that earn the bowl game, some of them will not receive the
Yeah.
reward of it. And that's sometimes that's just the cost of doing business. So
Yeah. Or you let them stay on, they get their NFL contracts and they get to play one game. They had an
no,
entire offseason for one game.
no, I do not like that idea at all. So
Well, the NBA is allowing it, so
I don't like that either. It's ridiculous. But I'm going to stop being old man that yells at clouds here.
yeah.
And we're going to get back to the playoff a little bit. You know, I talked about, so we've talked about bowl games a little bit. We've talked about conference championship games. You know, I mentioned earlier the first round bye teams, the top 4 seeds are 1-7, and anybody that plays in the conference championship game is 6-13 the last 2 years. So as we move into the playoff, I liked the tweaks of the top 5 automatically get in, but you see them as they are, not the top 4 get the 1-4 seeds. And that worked out exactly how it was supposed to for what the Power 4 wanted. They just didn't think they were going to get dominated the way they did in year 1. How would you change the seeding? What not different format even? Like what different formats would you have? I think it's inevitable now. We're going to go to 16 and nobody gets a bye. I think that's going to happen this next year.
So I think if you go to 16, you have to eliminate conference championship games, or there has to be some kind of there's no punishment or advancement from there. I just think, because if you're doing that, then teams are going to be guaranteed to play what, 8? Somebody may play 18 games now, or is it definitely maxed out at 17?
You would have. I mean, if you didn't get a bye this year, so Ohio State will say, or Alabama.
Yeah, played them both. Yeah,
I guess Ohio State got a bye. But
if
Bama
Alabama,
played in the
yeah,
SEC championship game for 13, and then played in the first round for game 14, and then they lost game 15 yesterday. So yeah, 17 is what it would max out. I think it would max out at that with a 16 team format as well. So
and then I guess if that still happens, I'm not smart enough to figure that out. But I think I like the idea of just straight seating, but you have football people make those decisions, not athletic directors with current ties. I think the football committee should be your Mac Browns, your Nick Saban, even though Nick Saban still has an office at Alabama, but your Mac guys, Mac. I've heard people throw around Mac Brown a lot. Played at Vanderbilt, coached at Texas, coached at North Carolina. So he has ties to 3 schools at 3 different conferences, right? So it's he could be as nonpartisan as can be, but kind of those football people that can kind of take stats away from it and just do the eye test, right? That's always the argument that people have. You have the most deserved. Remember what was it, the Baylor TCU in like 2012? It was, somebody had to get reward, somebody had to get skip over, but it's the eye test. You could look at a team and tell that they were ready to go compete in the playoff. Uh, how far that would go, how ugly that could get, I don't know. But I like the idea of straight seating with intelligence, not the right word, but more, I don't know, more football minded people are the ones making the decisions.
I'm not opposed to going back to the BCS computer rankings.
Yeah.
And whatever the expanded playoff is, I don't really like expanding the playoff more. It's going to happen to 16 at least.
Yeah.
I'm not a fan of it because I don't want 3 lost teams getting in. That's part of the reason why I don't get as excited about the NFL, because all you have to do in the NFL is win your division.
Yeah.
And you're automatically in. Like the NFC South. I'm a Saints fan, you're a Falcons fan. We're going to have either a 1 game above 500 Bucks team or a 1 game above. I guess if Panthers win, it would be 2 games above 500.
Yeah.
That make the playoffs and host a first round game. And that's not what I want. I want the elite teams. I want the best of the best, still with the group of 5 being or a group of 6 being represented, because that'll get all caught up in litigation if they're left out. So let them have their game in there. Let them have maybe 2 teams if they earn it, and go forward with it. And it's going to go to 16, but use the BCS rankings to rank those 16 teams. And then however you get that group of 5 in, if they're not in the top 16, then, number 16 gets bumped and group of 5 is seated as the 16 seed and go there, because all of those computers, yes, they do have some bias by the person that creates the algorithm to knock those out. But it's not. It's going to be biased towards offensive efficiency, defensive efficiency, or whatever they see fit. It's not going to be biased towards, I like this team because I was a fan of them, or I used to play for this team, I used to coach for this team. And you're taking those biases out. And I know coaches are getting very analytical. None of them are smart enough to be able to figure out, okay, this is what the polls are looking at. This is what we need to do on offense to bump our rankings up 4 spots. So I know everybody hated the BCS, but I like that. The other thing I would do is completely, if you keep the committee, completely get rid of all of the rankings other than the final ranking. Those rankings mean absolutely nothing. They're only for TV ads, for revenue, for fanfare, and to generate money. They mean absolutely nothing. So if it's not the final ranking after that Sunday after Thanksgiving, don't have them. That is just a waste of time, and it gets people's hopes up for no reason. The committee has said each ranking is independent from the previous. So it just gets fan bases and teams' hopes up for no reason.
Yeah, no, you're not wrong. What I do like about the idea of the 16 is that nobody gets the bye. As somebody, as a fan of a team who's had the bye 2 years in a row now and has lost after winning a conference championship, I like that. And then also, it keeps the bowl schedule where you then have, you still have your traditional bowl games, the Rose Bowl, Sugar Bowl on January 1st, but then each of those 8 teams gets a home game. I mean, you watch the game at A&M, the game at Oklahoma. Those were special. Those were fun. Even though even though neither one of them won, they're fun. Like that's what makes college football so much better to me than all the other sports is the home crowd and I hate the word the pageantry, but the pageantry around everything else, all the traditions and the fanfare and the tailgating and the all the different traditions. It's just that would be so much fun. And then looking at it now, no offense to JMU or to your Green Wave, I don't think there should be those automatic bids. I think it's just your top 16. Because then I think about like this year Texas, if we were to be like it was this year, having one play 6, traditional NCAA, the NCAA tournament, one play 16, 2 15, 3, etc. I mean, 16 would have been. I'm even trying to think Texas or Vanderbilt. I think Texas was, or USC was 16. I think ending the year. To me, that would have been a better game potentially than uh, JMU Oregon. I don't know that, but I think that even by the brand name, you'd get more eyes and you'd get more discussion on it.
I don't care about the ratings when it comes to playoffs. And Joseph Moore, 8556. He's got lots of comments for us today. I appreciate it. Always love responding to the comments and the interaction here. He says the group of 5 needs their own playoffs and let the big boys have their own and do straight seeding. I don't care what the ratings do. You had Alabama that lost by more points Texas Tech lost by more points to Oregon than James Madison did. I know there was some garbage points in there at the end for James Madison, but I think the group of 5 needs to be at the table, or group of 6 is what it is now. And 1, I think they deserve it. 2, it's going to be, because of the antitrust and all of that, those conferences will then sue, and it's never going to be able to go through. So they say, people say that, people like that idea, but it's going to be caught up in litigation forever, because there's the non-power conferences and schools will say that the power conferences have a monopoly. So unless the NCAA falls apart, I don't see that happening. I know NCAA doesn't have any control over the CFP. They handle the FCS Division II, Division III championships. But these schools are all still members of the NCAA. So as much as they're telling them, giving them to do what they want with a lot of eligibility type stuff, they still have their other sports involved, and they are still the governing body of the however many other sports each school has. And these schools are the ones that make the rules and vote on the different rules. So it's a very slippery slope to do that. I don't foresee that happening until the NCAA is completely gone.
Yeah, if you think, like I said, this is a completely fictional world. I agree with what Joseph says. I like the idea. I think having a third now a kind of a your F basically this is also turned into a championship subdivision, but having that middle tier of now the American Conference, Sun Belt, MAC, kind of all the group of six now, like you said. To me as just a fan, I love the sound of it. And then if you want to be even more fun, have it like European soccer where somebody gets relegated in between each seasons.
I'm not opposed. I am not opposed to that. I'm not fully smart enough. I don't pay attention to soccer at all. I'm also not smart enough to fully figure out how that would work. But I've seen some formats that I kind of liked how it worked. And I kind of, I'm open to that idea. If I can, I want to see it explored more, because I think that will also entice schools to, there needs to be some sort of salary cap, but that will entice some schools and fan bases maybe to push more money towards that when they see what it can do for a UCF who played in a New Year's Six Bowl, 3 years in a row, I think, and is now in the Big 12. And Tulane, who's been in a conference championship 4 years in a row and won it twice, played in the Cotton Bowls, been in the playoff now, and their fan base is more into football and athletics than what they've been in my 7 years working there, and from people that have worked there for 20 some years has ever been. So I think some of these schools that didn't care about football as much are starting to see the value in it, because I love college athletics. I love college football. That is one of the least important things a university does, because if they are not graduating students, their enrollment will drop and they will have to close their doors. But college athletics, especially football and basketball, some too, is the front porch, and it is the biggest media market, biggest any type of publicity they can get is what football does for them. And a good football team gets people excited.
I just get excited thinking about Tulane versus Arkansas for the last spot in the SEC for next year.
What? Huh?
I know you're talking about like the relegation. Just having a game, just taking Tulane play Arkansas. We have the playoff, then also have that off on the side for the last spot. Whoever wins gets the last spot in the SEC at the end of the year.
That is exciting. No, I'm not gonna lie, that's exciting, and I like this angle of it too that I didn't think about. It brings a different angle and is going to get it creates other excitement for teams that aren't doing that great, that have been eliminated from a conference championship game or the CFP or even bowl eligibility, to try to, get their fans excited so that they're not regulated.
And then JMU has to play who is the worst team in the ACC this year?
I don't know off the top of my head. I got to think Boston College maybe. I'll look real quick.
Something like that. JMU plays Boston College or Virginia Tech for the last spot in the ACC. I mean, it's completely far-fetched, but it's fun.
I actually kind of like that. Now that I'm thinking about it, I'm starting to like that regulation even more. Let's see. Syracuse and Boston College were both 1-7 in the ACC, so it would have been those two.
Yeah. You couldn't tell me it wouldn't be a good game, or at least JMU has a chance, a really good chance of beating them.
I think JMU beats a good portion of the bottom half of the ACC, to be honest.
Joseph, what's your thoughts?
Joseph says, I tell my Mississippi State fans, all of my Mississippi State fans friends, if they would drop down to the Sun Belt, they would be in the playoffs every year. SEC facilities with great talent, they could be a G5 team every year.
Joseph's still riding high from last night.
Joseph's always very vocal. He supports all the shows on College Sports Crew and likes to interact a lot. I always like hearing his opinion, and he probably is. Joseph, let me ask you this: are you still drunk from last night? And still, have you been just raging and partying and didn't sleep last night? Are you drinking a mimosa, Bloody Mary, whatever, without sleep from last night from all the excitement? And if you were in New Orleans for the game, you probably were. And his response, "I'm still pumped from last night." Man, that's awesome. That's all. That was. I was telling. I don't know if you were here right away. I was telling Cortland that was the best Sugar Bowl I've been to ever in the 5, 6, 7 that I've been to. A close second would be Washington, Texas, but the game's ending was probably a little bit more exciting. Washington, Texas, just the last couple plays. The overall game I didn't find as exciting.
Well, I'm now, and here's kind of here's my thing. I'm trying to think of the best way to word it, but with Ole Miss's success now, could you make the argument that is Lane worth what he's being paid? Because these guys are advancing without him. But is it the groundwork that he'd laid down? Right? It's still most of his coaching staff. But is it now? Was he truly the master behind it? Just fun, just fun for thought.
I've seen some people question that. I think so. It's his program from the last, how long has he been there? 4 or 5 years.
Yeah.
It's players he brought in. Obviously, the assistant coaches that are still there had a lot to do with it. His fingerprints are still all over these games. And I think so. I think it's a little bit different now with the transfer portal because players can leave at any time. But I think even in the old days, it was almost 2 years until, a coach. Like I still remember Tubby Smith got all kinds of crap at Kentucky when Rick Pitino won the national championship in 96, played for the national championship again in 97, losing to Arizona. And then they went back to the national championship with Tubby Smith in 98, won it. And Kentucky fans never really gave Tubby Smith his full due because he won a national championship with Rick Pitino's players. And I've heard that in football too, not as much recently, but I think and he's still got a lot on it. Joseph says to hell with Lane. This is Charlie's offense. And I think there is some to that too. Lane Kiffin is, I don't want to call him a quarterback whisperer, but he's very good with quarterbacks.
Well, back to your year 2 argument. I remember that always being kind of that's when coaches, if they weren't going to win one in year 2, they weren't going to win one. That was kind of the argument for a while. Urban won one in his second year. Saban at Bama won it in his second year. Kirby in his second year, Georgia got to the 2 and 26 in overtime. Was that far away from a national championship in year 2? Signetti's in year 2 now at Indiana. So I think there's something to that, to where you have players that got, although transfer air is a little different, the transfer portal air is a little different, but you've got basically, like under Kirby, you had Mark Richt players with a Mark Richt culture who are all just as talented in the world, getting a second kind of perspective on things, able to play a little bit different. I think there's something to the second year thing.
There is, and Urban Meyer won in his second year at both Ohio State and Florida, didn't he?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I definitely at Florida. Ohio State wouldn't surprise me, but yeah, at Florida for sure.
No, I think it was his third year at Ohio State, maybe.
I don't know.
They won in 14. He won like 25 games in a row. He went undefeated in 12, but they had a bowl ban for the Tattoo Gate. Went undefeated in the regular season in 13 and lost to Michigan State in the Big Ten championship. So, so it was his third year. Jim Tressel won in his second year at Ohio State.
Yeah, so I think there's something to it.
I think there is, which makes me curious. Penn State had a bunch of talent this past year. The season kind of blew up on them. Makes me wonder if Matt Campbell's going to be able to do anything in year 2 at Penn State. So, all right, let's get back to the college football format. We talked about 16 teams. You mentioned seeding 1 through 16. So you would just have one bracket, 1 through 16, or would you go two different brackets, seed both sides 1 through 8, and have them come in that way? There's a little bit different angles there. It's not going to change too much, but it might change it slightly.
I don't know. I hadn't really thought about it. I just looked at it as like a 1 versus 16, but I see what you're saying. You have 1 versus 16. It could be the same. It just depends on how you stack the bracket, right? It would still be the same result. You have 1 versus 16 at the top and then 2 versus 15 at the bottom, and then you just kind of alternate 3, 4 as it moves its way into the middle. I think it would be roughly the same. If you did, 1 versus 16 on this side and 2 versus 15 on this side.
It will be until you get into the later rounds because of how they break out as they're coming. I think I'd have to write it down on paper.
I got you. Yeah, I'd have to look at it, but no, I just think the straight seeding of 1 versus 16, and then you got 8 versus 9 in the middle, and then you kind of go from there is what I think.
Yeah, I think that's how I would do it too, and I don't ever want to reseed. I know the NFL reseeds where the highest seed left always play the lowest seed.
Yeah.
I want whatever they do, if it's 1 through 8, or 1 through 16.
Yeah.
When you win, you stay in that spot on your bracket, like the NCAA, March Madness, and some other tournaments. Pro sports tends to go the highest seed, always plays the low. I don't want that. One thing I do want, you mentioned a little bit earlier, I would love to see all games played on campus until the national championship game.
Yeah, I
because
think
of
that's
what you mentioned earlier.
Yeah, I love the idea, but I think once again there's too much money in these bowl games. I think you do that, the Rose Bowl goes away unless you have now these teams that are outside the top 16 playing in the Rose Bowl, which I don't think is going to draw that much. You'll have your passionate football fans that'll watch, but that's not going to grab your casual viewer to watch the Rose Bowl this year. At least that's in my opinion. I think the first round should be at home, at least when we decide to reformat, if it's coming next year. I think the top 1 through 8 gets a home game because of A, the added revenue, and then B, it's just awesome to watch. And then it wouldn't change anything than what we have right now. The first round games would be at home, and then you go right into the bowl games, into the bowl season. It's just because you're adding 4 more teams. Now nobody gets a bye. So I think it wouldn't really change the schedule. It's just now the top 8 get a home game.
So I think what you do with the bowl games is if you go that route is I've seen people say the Rose Bowl should always host a national championship. I don't necessarily agree with that. I think you get the Rose Bowl is amazing. It's my favorite bowl game. I've been to one. It's an awesome experience. You've been to one. I know you had a great experience. But I think you need to move it around because you're going to have some SEC teams, some Big Ten teams, Clemson, Florida State. You're going to have some East Coast teams that make the championship game. If you look at who's played the national championship game the last 7-8 years, it's the majority east of the Mississippi. You don't want them traveling to the Rose Bowl every single year. So I think for fan bases and to kind of help out with distance traveling and get more fans there, all of that, you go pick your top 4, top 6, top 8, whatever bowl games. And the Rose Bowl has it this year, then the Sugar Bowl, then the Cotton Bowl, then the Orange Bowl, and you rotate it around between those games. And outside of that top 16, then the Rose Bowl can go back to your top Big Ten and your top. They're gonna have to partner up. So I guess the Pac-12 is coming back. I don't know if the Big Ten wants to play in the bowl game, but whoever they partner with, your top 2 teams from those conferences that don't make the playoff, then they play in the Rose Bowl. Your top 2, SEC and they partner with the Big 12, right? The Sugar Bowl. So your top SEC, Big 12 at the Sugar Bowl.
Outside of the playoff, you mean, right?
Yeah,
I got you.
That don't make the playoff, then play in that. And it's again, that's probably something TV's not going to hate because then it allows them to have more bowl games at that point. And TV is all about the money.
Yeah, I think there would be some pushback because it is in the top games, but also when the BCS started, that was the original format of the BCS of what you're talking about, where they had the bowl championship series and they rotated between the 4 games. when I first really started watching college football, I think was the first year of the BCS when I really started getting into it. And I didn't know I didn't know what it was before that, right? I didn't know that, the SEC went to the Sugar Bowl every year and played kind of not random, but kind of a pre-assigned, and then one never played two. One may play eight, and two would play seven or whatever. It wasn't assigned that way. So that's kind of how I was introduced to the Big Four, and so to me, traditionally, as far as back as the early 2000s, late 90s is concerned, uh, those are kind of the Big Four that are part of the rotation now, adding in the Cotton and the Peach Bowl.
Yeah, and when I first started watching the early '90s, I know the '98 season. I think is the first year of the BCS that you're talking about. When I first started watching late '80s, early '90s, the four big ones were the Cotton, the Rose, the Orange, and the Sugar. The Peach Bowl and the Fiesta Bowl. I don't even know if the Peach Bowl was in the original BCS. I think the Cotton Bowl, for whatever reasons, they didn't sign the contract. They didn't agree to it. So they got bumped out and the Fiesta Bowl came in.
Mm-hmm.
And then when they went to New Year's 6, they brought the Peach Bowl in. Obviously, for that type of stuff, they're looking at a lot more. They're looking at, cities that are big enough to host those type of games, airports
And the
that are
market.
in and out of
In the market of
TV
Atlanta.
market.
Yeah.
Yep. And also, I think I don't know if you're going to get pushback from having lesser teams in those bowl games from TV, because they're still going to get marketing for it. They're still going to sell the ad revenue. Who you're going to get the pushback from is your city sports commissions, the actual bowl staff, those type people, because it's not going to be as good. But I don't, I'd have to see somebody put it on paper. But if they can maybe see the greater good of the cause for college football, maybe they would be open to it.
Yeah, I see. I'm just thinking right now, like, for example, outside of the playoff, the Sugar Bowl would have been either Texas or Vanderbilt in New Orleans. I think because of how new Texas is and how rare they played in the Sugar Bowl. In recent years, they played in it more. The 2019 or 2018 season, they played Georgia. Then they played last in the last 14 playoff. Right, they played in the Sugar Bowl, didn't they?
Yeah,
So
I think so.
yeah, but because of that fan base, they probably have a decent showing. But if you told Vandy fans they get to go play in the Sugar Bowl, I mean, I think half of Nashville would be in New Orleans for New Year's. I don't know who they would play, but it's not a bad idea. But I think that's the SEC. I don't know how other fan bases would go. Um, yeah, I think the Rose Bowl and Sugar Bowl are easy sells, right? I was talking to my wife yesterday watching the game. Was that there's people that go before the season even starts. Hey, we're going to go watch the Rose Bowl this year. It's a sports fan destination. Of we're going to go. We're going to. It doesn't matter who's playing, but we're going to the Rose Bowl, right? So I think those are easy sells. But I think like the Cotton or the Peach, I don't think even the Fiesta maybe I don't think has that mystique. Because even as a playoff game, we've had my dad's had tickets for Peach Bowl from when we lived in Atlanta. He was part of like the renewal every year, and it'd be a playoff game, and you were having to sell Peach Bowl tickets for $50. And then they got to some point, some days of, we're trying to give them away as semifinal playoff games.
That part is kind of crazy, and that's surprising. I know last year you had Sugar Bowl and Peach Bowl tickets, and you couldn't give them away. So,
Sugar Bowl for obviously different reasons, but
yeah.
Peach Bowl was Texas and Arizona State. Texas had already played in the SEC championship game 3 weeks before, and then the national championship game was also in Atlanta. So Texas fans, at least this is my interpretation of it, that was the least of the three kind of in rankings. They just played in Atlanta, and if they're going to go to Atlanta again, that's going to be for a national championship game. So they had no interest in tickets. And then Arizona State was, a trek and a half to Atlanta for a noon game on New Year's Day. So, but also TV also trumps everything because you get a couple million eyes on a game, and it trumps any kind of beer sales in a stadium.
Every time.
Yeah.
Every time. All right. So we threw some ideas out. I don't know. I don't know if I'm happy with any of them. I don't think any of them are perfect, but there's probably a lot of unknown stuff behind the scenes too that we aren't aware of what makes these games go and tick. So Cortland, I know you're aware of this. For those of you watching live that have never listened to the Weekly Walk On podcast, I end every single episode of the podcast with the weekly wild card. It's 3 questions, just kind of first thing that pops into your head. Give me an answer, and kind of a hot topics type thing. So, Cortland, I know Georgia is out. Your first question for the weekly wild card. 4 teams left. Who do you want to win the college football playoff now, since Georgia's out?
I don't even know if I have anybody that I want. I think it'll be Indiana at this point. I think they shocked me at least against Alabama. It wasn't even competitive. It was it was it looked like a Division two team or a 1AA team. I mean they couldn't stay on the field with them. Um, I thought Alabama was. I thought they were going to win that game. To be honest, I thought they had kind of righted the ship. I know they couldn't really run the ball, but I just thought they could out athlete them, and I was very wrong. Um, I think from a brand standpoint, I think it'd be cool to see Oregon win. They have such a big fan base, and I feel like they have a lot of history, but just don't have a national title. So Oregon would be cool, but I think Indiana's going to do it.
I kind of want Indiana too, just for and I was indifferent about the Alabama Indiana game yesterday. I did pick Indiana to win, but I kind of want Alabama or Indiana to win it all, simply because, and this is why I wanted to beat Indiana, the histories of those programs. You got the second losingest program of all time, and they, up until Signetti got there, they were the losingest program of all time. I would love to see them win it all, and that's the only reason I'm indifferent to all the teams, to be honest.
Yeah, but I also don't know if I can handle Big Ten fans saying that they've now won 3 in a row with 3 different teams. Once it became legal for everybody to play their players.
Yeah. All right, Cortland, we've talked about it a lot. We've given out some different ideas. How many teams are going to be in the CFP next year?
I think they might stick with 12 for another year, but it wouldn't surprise me if they do 16. I think with the way I think we'll see how it plays out. I think if the championship game ends up being Miami and Oregon, a 10 versus 5, I think that'll change things maybe a little bit, or Ole Miss Oregon. That may cause for, hey, here's an argument that these middle teams, especially after last year having 5 through 8 be the final 4. I think that gives the argument of maybe we do need to expand it a little bit more. But it wouldn't surprise me if we go to 16.
We're only 2 years in, and while it's not perfect, I don't really want them to change it yet. The crazy thing
they changed it after year 1 year, and they changed it.
But that was only a slight tweak for standings or seating, and I think that needed to be changed. The one, the hard part with changing CFP is every single conference commissioner and Notre Dame's AD have to agree to any changes. So I'm going to say it stays at 12, just because I don't think they're all going to agree.
Yeah.
All right. Final question, Cortland. When are you going to come to a game at Tulane?
Well, as you know, I have a 5-year-old and a 3-year-old and one on the way, so that makes things not very easy. But I want, how badly I want to. It's just making it work. We've tried so many times to have it to where Tulane plays on a Saturday and then there's a Saints game Sunday, or Tulane plays Thursday, LSU plays Saturday, Saints. We've tried to do something like that. So, but yeah, you've got me on the air now, having to do it. So we'll look at Tulane's schedule.
That's why I asked the question. I was nervous about it. I had a backup question for the weekly wild card. I wasn't sure if I was going to ask or not, but that's why I asked. Bring the wife if you want to, and you can give the kids off to. She has a great aunt and uncle. That amazing uncle's been on this show before. She has kids have great grandparents.
Yeah.
All love to watch the grandkids. So
I would never put that on. I would never put that on anybody, having to watch all 3 of them for a weekend at once. All right, what was the backup question? Come on.
I can't tell you now. I've already asked all 3 of the weekly wild card is 3 questions, man. That's all it is. So,
okay. Do all parties have to approve changes to that as well, or is this a dictatorship?
It's my podcast. I run the podcast. So,
yeah, fair enough.
All right. I appreciate everybody that jumped on live. This is the first time we've ever done this for the Weekly Wildcard podcast. And it was fun. This is something I'm going to try to look into doing for next year, getting it every single episode on the College Sports Crew. Still trying to work out some tweaks of how I'm going to do that. Since I do have, for those of you that never watched, I have a different person every time and try to get former players, current players, administrators, and talk about their involvement with college football, and sometimes also bring in different people and get their opinions as a fan, because I'm just a college football nerd. I love hearing everybody's experience, why they're passionate about the game, and their thoughts and opinions. And then since I worked in college athletics for 15 years and played college football, I love hearing what other people's experiences are professionally or playing the game. So that's what the Weekly Walk-On podcast is about. It can be heard, for those of you that, again, first time watching it live, it can be heard on any of the major podcast distributors, Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, Spotify, and you can ask Alexa. It's on Amazon Music. So put it out every Friday during the season. And since I'm still on Christmas break, I figured I would try live. Check me out. You can follow me live or you can follow me on Twitter. It's CFB Guy. My Instagram is CFB Guy1. And then also the College Sports Crew, where you're watching now. Subscribe to that, like that. Their Twitter page is at College Crew, College Sports Crew on YouTube. Give it a like and subscribe. And then I do have one show on Tuesdays that is on College Sports Crew as well. It's called Sweet Tea in the SEC. You can follow that account on Instagram. It's Sweet Tea _SEC. I hope everybody has a great 2026, enjoys the last few college football games that we have. It's kind of bittersweet. We're getting towards the end here. And appreciate everybody that tuned in to watch this new version of the Weekly Walk-On. And remember, there's nothing like Saturdays in the fall.